performance, but that's not what we're talking about. Anyway, this is episode 17 of Two Next Podcast. So happy to be back with all of you people.
Don't say that.
What?
Don't say you people.
Well, you just did, so yeah.
Nah.
Hi, I'm Sean.
I'm Lisa.
And we are your hosts for this episode and for all other episodes of this podcast as well.
Yeah, it's been a while. Why has it been a while?
Because we keep procrastinating and...
Well, we've also had stuff.
We've had a lot of stuff. Oh my goodness. And
good stuff, work stuff, busy stuff, fun stuff.
Yeah, lots been going on since we last recorded. I had COVID, so that was exciting.
Yeah, it has been a while.
It has been a while, because that was almost 3 months ago.
Yeah, and I didn't get COVID, so there.
Yeah, so we're both equally up to date on our stuff, so why did only one of us get it? Or why did any of us get it in the first place?
Because I work in a high school, which is a germ farm, and I really think I'm immune to everything.
That is true. You never get sick, really.
Not really. Just allergy things once in a while. Knock on wood.
And that is actual wood, too.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of things have been going on in the Beach Boys world, too. Like there was...
a great explosion?
Well, kind of, sort of. And the victims of that explosion were Scott Totten and John Cowsill, who are no longer in the touring band. It's a damn shame. Those are two really good musicians. Mm-hmm. And Scott Totten was, I think, their musical director. And he is I like to say he's the equivalent of Darian from Brian's band.
Yeah.
We know John Cowsill was fired, and I don't know about Scott. I don't know if he left on his own terms or what. From what I understand, everybody's still on good terms, and they're still hanging out with everybody. So what would be interesting is if John Cowsill joined his sister and brothers.
Oh, man.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, really, if you ever get the opportunity to see the Cowsills, especially if Susan Cowsill is involved.
She will be.
Do it.
Yeah.
Because... they are a lot of fun. Susan Cowsill is a total hoot on stage. Very funny, very personable, a lot of great banter in between songs. I mean, we saw them open for Mickey Dolenz a long time ago.
2014, I think it was.
Something like that. There's only so many Cowsill songs you can play because they pretty much just played their hits, but then did some really great covers.
Yeah,
and
in fact, one of them explained that the reason they do so many covers, they're like, we only had 4 hits, so we got to do something.
I mean, they're very entertaining.
And let's see, what else has been going on in the Beach Boys world? Al Jardine kind of let a cat out of the bag. He let 2 cats out of the bag, actually. One is that he's working on a book, which I believe is going to be an autobiography.
I certainly hope so.
Well, he has another book that's not an autobiography.
Well, yeah, he has the children's book.
Yeah. And on a podcast called Area 831, he mentioned that he was working with Blondie Chaplin on a upcoming Brian Wilson solo album. So hopefully that actually gets released. Hopefully it's better than the Long Promised Road soundtrack.
Do you think it's going to be a rock and roll record?
Oh, good grief. We can only hope.
And I mean, if there's something we know about Al, is that pretty much if he drops something, it eventually happens. It may not be for a while, because didn't he give the first indications of what became the Feel Flow set? Like,
yes.
Quite a few. I mean, it was long before the pandemic, and of course the pandemic delayed everything. So, but I mean, he was talking about that a long time ago.
Yeah. And
people were like, okay, do we believe this? Do we not believe this? Because we didn't have any inklings from any other source at that time. I want to say it was probably around like 2018.
Might have been. I don't know.
It was a long time ago. And then it did happen. Yep. And I know I can't remember offhand, but I know there's been other things that Al has said that did happen to some extent. Yeah. So he is not an unreliable source.
No. Sometimes what he says isn't 100% what actually happens, but it's still, if he says
in the
it's
realm.
Probably, yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I did not hear about the book thing, and if he's writing a memoir, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
just because for all of the touring experiences that he's had all over the world, I mean, I wouldn't want to read it so much for a history lesson because we've gotten that from so many other places. I want to hear stories, like stuff from the road, experiences, crazy things backstage, times Dennis walked around naked.
Yep.
Like stuff that we have not heard that might be fun.
Yeah, you said the same thing about how you wish Mike would come up with a book like that too, which I would agree with. Any of those guys, really.
Yeah, just kind of the collection of notes from the road from decades of touring.
By the way, Mike, Al, anybody else listening, if you would decide to do a book like that, remember who gave you that idea. And
that Sean and I both have professional editing experience, so we'd be happy to help proofread.
Yeah, for modest fee. And,
yeah.
Yeah, we are nothing if not needing to pay bills. So another interesting thing that came up is, unlike the previous 2 years, it is now summer, but we do not have a Beach Boys Sirius XM channel to listen to. Or do we? Because according to somebody on the Endless Harmony forum going by the username Cork on the Ocean, and I quote, a few days ago, this was posted on June 23rd, we're recording this on June 25th, a few days ago on 60s Gold, after a Beach Boys or Bruce and Terry song, can't remember which, the host said the channel was coming back probably on or around 4th of July. He didn't know when, and said something like, not sure if I was supposed to announce that yet.
Well, okay, we've had the Beach Boys channel. One time it was done quite a while ago.
Yeah, we didn't even have Sirius
before
yet,
we had it. But they did it 3 times in more recent years.
Yes.
And the first time it started in May. It started right before Memorial Day. But the last 2 times it started around 4th of July. And it went until like August 31st.
And interestingly, each of those 3 times, they were promoting something. They were promoting that symphonic thing that I really don't care for. They were promoting the Field Flows box set the next year, or the next time, I should say. And last year when they did it, they were promoting 2 things. Mostly it was the re-release, remaster, remix of Sounds of Summer, and a little bit hinting at Sail on Sailor.
Yeah.
I don't know of anything that's coming out this year. So I don't know what they would be promoting, or unless they just decided to do this for the heck of it.
There's been a lot of clamor for the Beach Boys channel to be permanent.
Yeah.
I would definitely go for that if it became kind of a Beach Boys with associated music, such as, of course, the more obvious things like Jan and Dean, but even going into like surf music, the South Carolina beach music, little genre, the little tiny genre of certain like R&B songs that were very popular in the late 60s. And even just simply talking about such things, because you're looking at me like you have no idea what I'm talking about.
No, I'm looking at you like
and just
out, which I am.
Not having it be just Beach Boys songs over and over, but having a good variety. I mean, you look at the Beatles channel.
Yep.
The Beatles channel isn't just Beatles songs and solo, but they have covers, they have artists that influence the Beatles, like they'll play like Little Richard or something like that. And then, of course, artists that were inspired by the Beatles, which is everybody. They've even played some Beach Boys stuff or some Brian stuff over time.
They played on somebody's show on that channel. They played the 1988 version of Love and Mercy.
I know.
When there was no reason to, other than he said, I'm playing some Beatles songs that are related to peace, but I want to throw this one in just because. And he did. I don't remember who it was, but I don't know. And they do a talk show. I mean,
yeah.
Hey, Beach Boys channel, Sirius Beach Boys BRI, if you want somebody to do that for a channel, I know a couple of people who are experienced in doing a talk show about the Beach Boys.
Yeah, of course. But there's also plenty of professionals that they could get. They could have...
We have professional equipment.
Hush. I'd love to hear Carney do a half hour,
Oh
an
my God,
hour.
yes.
That would be fantastic. There's a great deal of potential there. And a lot of fans have been writing to SiriusXM asking for that.
There's a petition going around on change.org for a permanent channel, and I'll put the link to that in our show notes.
For what it's worth, I'd be happy to just have it be a summer thing, if anything. If, like, at least do that. At least have it be a summer thing. Just for the love of all things bright and beautiful, please change up the set list.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to hear Spirit of America every day or multiple times a day.
There are songs they were playing multiple times an hour.
I know. It, like Little Deuce Coupe. Didn't we hear that like 2 or 3 times once?
We went to visit a friend of ours, maybe about an hour and a half drive round trip. In that time, we heard Little Deuce Coupe 4 times.
Yeah.
The same version.
Granted, they definitely throw in major deep cuts. I mean, they really do have a fantastic resource to draw from. It's just there are some titles that just come up and I don't understand why Spirit of America. I mean, at least you could argue that Little Deuce Coupe was a hit single.
Yeah.
You stop people on the street and you ask them to name some Beach Boys songs, that's probably going to be one of them. But Spirit of America? No. It's Brian whining for like 20 minutes about some guy who didn't blow himself up.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, we're going to get letters on that.
Yeah, including from me, because I like that song.
Yeah, I know, but when you hear it 48,000 times...
What if they play God Only Knows 48,000
well, that's
times?
different.
Are you going to get tired of that?
No, because that's like one of the best songs ever made in the history of ever.
Such a great song that anytime there's any kind of a Beach Boys tribute, related tribute done on stage or whatever, it's going to be included on there.
Well, yeah.
Such as the Grammy tribute to the Beach Boys. Well, see how we transitioned there, folks?
That was very... Did you learn that in radio class in college?
Actually, no.
Oh, okay.
No, Bob did not teach us about transitions.
So, yeah, back on Easter Sunday on CBS... we had the Grammy tribute to the Beach Boys.
As I was battling COVID.
Yes. Yeah, where we didn't spend the day with family instead. I cooked a nice dinner at home.
That I couldn't taste because of the medicine.
Yeah, Paxlovid kind of did a number on you.
Yeah, I mean, I was fine, you know. I mean, it was one of the most mellow illnesses I ever had, but still, if they give you Paxlovid, it may have the side effect of making everything taste like metal. So this special was a concert that was previously recorded, and the Beach Boys themselves were in attendance. Brian, Mike, Al, David Marks, and Bruce Johnston. Yep.
And they were just sitting up in a balcony, didn't speak, didn't perform. I know some fans were expecting them to be kind of like Statler and Waldorf.
Like, that would have been awesome.
That would have been great if they were heckling. Well, I mean, for what it's worth, for quite a lot of the reaction shots, Brian looked bored.
He always looks bored.
I know he does. And
I think they were using some of the exact same reaction shots multiple times.
They were. It was kind of obvious, but... See, I don't blame Brian for looking bored. I know, there are people who try to read the tea leaves and be like, oh, he's in poor health and he doesn't want to be there and all this stuff, when it's like, I don't think that it was that at all. I just think that when you have people performing his songs in the same way, like, I just don't think it does anything for him. Like, it doesn't impress him. It's just kind of like, okay, yeah, you could play Sloop John B. Can I go home now?
He just has resting bored face.
Well, that too. But it's like, you look at kind of the difference when Brian received the Kennedy Center honor, that he looked bored until that British Boys Choir performed. then he looked interested because it was different.
Yeah.
And it was something done with a great deal of care and attention to his harmony work. So it's like, that got his attention. Not some celebrity he doesn't really care about doing the same old thing.
Well, it's like when Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey got the same thing. They looked bored until the police and fire people came out.
until for
so that's to be expected, I would say.
Yeah, until the curtains parted and there was a chorus of New York policemen singing Teenage Wasteland.
I mean, really think about it. You have these legendary band members. They get pulled aside and said, hey, we want you to go sit in here and listen to other people do their music. We're not going to ask you any questions. We're not going to have you perform. You're just going to sit there and watch. How would you feel? Would you be
well, yeah, some people, it probably drives them nuts that they're not down there playing along. I mean, and also the fact that I know for the Kennedy Center Honors, the honoree does not know in advance what is happening. Like, they do not know who is there to present. And sometimes there's some really great, like, you look at the performers, there's some really great surprises or just people who are very touched. Like, I know when Carole King got hers and Aretha.
Oh my goodness.
I got goosebumps just thinking about it. Aretha at the piano singing, I guess it was Natural Woman.
It must have been, yeah.
And with her fur coat on. I love that she was still wearing her fur coat. But like Carole King you probably can find this on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
I thought she was just going to launch herself over that balcony and run up to the stage.
I would not have been surprised.
So, yeah. I mean, sometimes it's really great, but...
Yeah.
But for this special, and I just gotta say, and I'm sure I am not the only fan who feels this way, when it comes to the Grammy people, I just feel like there's been kind of too little too late. That so many artists in the 60s, rock and roll artists who were doing groundbreaking work, especially when you're talking about a lot of people who were not classically trained, didn't go to conservatories. A lot of rock and rollers were either self-taught or kind of learned on a, how should I say it, like a local level, like taking lessons from somebody, but not anything that, say, people who compose orchestral works, like they didn't have the education that people like that had. And yet turning out like stuff that was innovative and different and using recording studios and doing all kinds of stuff. Like, we just went last week to see a performance of Tommy, which is running here in Chicago as kind of a workshop for a potential national tour and hopefully Broadway revival. And it's just like, Pete Townsend should have at least gotten a Grammy nomination just for acknowledgement of this work. I mean, it's stunning what he put together. Mm-hmm. But in the 60s, most of these things were ignored. And of course, as we all know, Good Vibrations did receive...
Oh, it hurts.
Did receive a Grammy nomination, and it lost to basically a studio-created thing called Winchester Cathedral that was meant to sound like... It was basically a novelty song. It was kind of a throwback to 1920s vaudeville sound. It's an okay song on its own merits, but it's not a Grammy-winning song, especially when it's up against Good Vibrations.
Up against Good Vibrations and Monday Monday and Eleanor Rigby.
And it's like the Beach Boys Pet Sounds didn't get any nominations. Pet Sounds has never got any recognition from the Grammy people back then. But it's like, in more recent years, some years ago, there was the Grammy Hall of Fame was instituted. And I think that was really as a way for them during the Grammy broadcast to acknowledge people like the Beach Boys, The Who, and all these other acts that were never given their due back in the day, like almost a way to correct it. Be like, oh, we're going to put you in our Hall of Fame, even though we never gave you like an actual award. And it's like, you still have to love that the one Grammy Brian has, Brian, who is a virtuoso of vocal harmony. He won for Best Instrumental.
Which had vocal harmonies in it, by the way.
Yeah, but not as a chief part of the work.
And something that we were talking about a couple of days ago is that there are, as far as I know, 3 Beach Boys related Grammy Awards out there. 2 of them are because of Smile. Because the Smile Sessions picked up something, what was it, Best Historical Set or something?
Let me check.
And of course, Brian got Best Instrumental for Mrs. O'Leary's Cow. And of course, Bruce Johnston got a Grammy for, I don't remember what it was, but it was for being the composer of I Write the Songs.
Okay, so the Beach Boys were nominated for Kokomo, Best Pop Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocal.
Did not know that.
And of course, Good Vibrations was nominated for 3 awards.
Oh.
Best Performance by a Vocal Group, Best Contemporary Rock and Roll Recording, and Best Contemporary Rock and Roll Group Performance, Vocal or Instrumental. Yeah. And for some reason, they don't have the win for the Smile Sessions.
If you look up under the Smile Sessions entry itself, it's like in the awards and charts.
Unless they don't. If you look up under Brian, let's see, the Smile Sessions is listed there. Because I guess he's specifically named. Let's see, Best Historical Album. Brian Wilson Presents Smile was nominated for Best Long-Form Music Video, as well it should. And then Brian Wilson Presents Smile was nominated for Best Pop Vocal Album. He won for Mrs. O'Leary's Cow.
Yeah.
Pet Sound Sessions was nominated for Best Historical Album, as it should. Oh, and there's actually a 4th nomination for Good Vibrations, Best Arrangement Accompanying a Vocalist or Instrumentalist. Man, they had wordy categories back then.
Yeah, Smile Sessions picked up the Grammy for Best Historical Album in 2013.
Yeah.
That's what it won. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, the way that thing was put together, how could you
I know, right?
Oh my goodness.
It even had a light.
Well, some copies did.
I know.
We didn't spring for the light up version.
Yeah, if you've never seen it, see if on YouTube you can find the little video clip where Brian turns on the light and he just like starts laughing. It's like the funniest thing he's ever seen.
It's like what Geets Romo said about the box that lights up, you know. It's like Dig.
Yeah, and if you don't know what Sean's talking about, go listen to How to Speak Hip now.
Yeah,
just
please do.
Pause this, go listen to How to Speak Hip,
don't pause
and then
it. Listen
come back.
to us first. Just put it in.
But anyway, Grammy special thing where they're like, yeah, let's honor people because we screwed up years ago.
Yeah.
So what was this thing?
I'm still trying to figure out. I mean, I don't get the point of it, but I kind of do and I kind of don't. Of course, it was undoubtedly a nod to their 60th anniversary.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason why. Because, as we all know, the Beach Boys started in 1963. Now, it's just, they never get the anniversaries right.
Well, okay, now one of the anniversaries we always talk about them getting wrong is the Good Vibrations 30th anniversary box set, which came out in 1993. Now, I had heard from someone who's usually a reliable source that it was meant to mark the 30th anniversary of Surfin' USA, which I don't know, that just seems kind of weak.
That's kind of weak. Because that's not even, wait, Surfin' USA, the album or the song?
The song. Okay,
but that wasn't even their first big capital nationwide single.
It was their first, serious hit, though.
Yeah.
Surfin' Safari wasn't that huge a hit.
Yeah, but still.
So, I don't know. It just seems like an odd way to mark an anniversary.
I mean, that's like saying that the Beatles started in 1964. Like, no. All right, so anyway, this special had a lot of people. doing a lot of things.
Yep, that's a good way to describe it. Mostly current artists, mostly. And if not current, then they're recent enough that pretty much everybody has heard of them.
Yeah.
Mind you, I have not heard of necessarily every single one of the current artists, but
I think there was only like one that I had never, ever heard of.
I had never heard of Jimmy Jam.
Yeah.
I never heard of St. Vincent.
Oh,
apparently she's been around a while.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of her.
I never heard of Andy Grammer. I never heard of...
that was the one but...
Luke Spiller, Taylor Momsen, no idea who they were. I had to look them up.
But that's kind of us. Like...
That is true, yeah. But you're around teenagers, so...
Yeah, but I'm also around... I'm also around teenagers who... I mean, something to know about, at least from my experience teaching high school in Chicago, that my students' musical interest is very, very broad. There's very little that I really feel like everybody knows. I mean, you talk to one kid, they're totally into rap and hip hop. Another kid is going to be into K-pop.
Yeah.
And there's even the K-pop fans. Not all of them are into BTS or Blackpink. Like, there's many, many different K-pop interests and factions.
Oh, yeah.
Then you've got kids who are into music that they heard growing up from their parents, like 80s music, old school R&B, hip hop. I mean, it's, there are kids who know songs. I'm like, how do you know that? And it's like they do, or they just go down rabbit holes on YouTube or whatever, or they'll hear a song in a movie and they'll look it up. I mean, it's, like you cannot put kids nowadays in a box.
No.
Couple notes before we get into talking about like the performances. We were glad to see that, the house band for this show was pretty freaking tight. They were really, absolutely. Really good.
No complaints about the band.
And we were glad to see two familiar faces. There was Probin Gregory from Brian's band, who we have seen many, many, many times. He is multi-talented and always good to see him there because there's going to be some good instrumentation.
Yeah, we even saw him as Mike Nesmith and Mickey Dolenz, one of his backup musicians.
And
one of their backup musicians. Good grief.
And Abe Laboriel Jr., who is in Paul McCartney's band.
Yeah, he also backed up Justin Timberlake.
Did he really?
Yep.
I did not know that. But he's a great drummer and by all accounts a really great guy. So it was good to see him there. So something we were a little bit upset about is that there really wasn't much at all in tribute to Carl or Dennis.
Yeah.
Which is kind of surprising and kind of upsetting.
It's very upsetting. Yeah, their tribute to Dennis was the same thing that the Mike Love-led Beach Boys have been doing for since at least 1996. This one's for Dennis! And it was, do you want to dance? Are you farking kidding me?
Yeah. It's like, hello, Forever? A beautiful song that Dennis wrote and produced and did a lot of,
He has a huge log of songs that you could have picked from, but no, you pick a cover.
Yeah. That wasn't even like his best vocal or, I mean, it was good. I mean, it was decent, but I mean, there are other songs that he sang much better.
Good Lord. Forever, Little Bird. Even Got to Know the Woman. I mean, it might be a little bit too up-tempo to be like a memorial kind of thing, but still, come on, guys. Give Dennis the respect that his artistry deserves.
But and there was nothing done. I mean, at least there was a song done in honor of Dennis. There wasn't anything done in honor of Carl.
Yeah, unless we missed something, nobody said a thing about, this is in memory of Carl who's gone, blah, blah, blah.
Or
blah.
even like in the, because Brandi Carlile and John Legend performed God Only Knows as the closing number. Not even in that mentioning Carl, how beautifully he sang it.
Mm-hmm.
Or, wait, did anybody do Good Vibrations?
Oh, yeah. My notes say good vibrations, good performance by the band, could do without Beck.
Well, that's kind of just an overall statement.
Yeah, I am not. I never liked Beck.
No.
I never
We used to
Beck.
call him Bleck. but,
Hey, I never liked him before I even knew you, so.
well, same here. Okay, so they did do Good Vibrations, but, not even a mention of Carl for that. That was a little bit strange, and I have to wonder if our friends in the balcony may have been a little bit taken aback by that.
Who
Since
knows?
they've always had moments to mention Carl and Dennis in anything that they do. A lot of the performances were pretty much sounding, let's do something that sounds just like the record. I mean, when there's a show like this, I kind of like the artist to put, you can still sound like the record, but put a little bit of yourself into it.
Sure.
And I gotta say, I am not a fan of Mumford & Sons, but they did a great performance of I Know There's an Answer because it was in their way. And they had some weird instrument that looked like a
giant hunk of wood or something.
Like it looked like stuff that they picked up from an alley and put it together.
Yeah, if anybody
the show.
knows what that thing is, let us know. Or if
It
it's
was
just something they did.
some kind
I
of
don't know.
strange instrument.
Yeah.
But again, I give them props because they did it in their way. And it was interesting.
Oh, yeah.
And it was different. Another person who performed in her own way, Norah Jones.
Oh, yeah.
She did The Warmth of the Sun at the piano, kind of bluesy, and it was very much like something that would have fit in perfectly on one of her albums.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I think everybody was talking about who attended the performance, because this was filmed, or I don't know if they used film, but it was recorded months before it actually aired, as these things usually are. The thing that people talked about the most was Leon Rimes' performance of Caroline No, which I gotta say was a really nice arrangement. And thankfully, her arrangement extended the length of it, because that is a short song.
Yeah.
You don't want it to end so quickly.
She put in, I think there was, she repeated the verses, and I think there was like a longer instrumental part. That was very well done, very emotional. And something I did like, Charlie Puth, who is a younger artist who's getting more and more attention. He did Wouldn't It Be Nice? And it was a great performance. Not terribly far from the record. I don't really know his work, so I can't say how much of him went into it. But he did speak before about how much Pet Sounds meant to him and how he listened to it growing up because his dad always played it in the house. So I will never get tired of young people talking about how important Pet Sounds is. So the fact that he had that kind of respect and reverence for the material, that's significant.
Mm-hmm. Looking through my notes here, and I mention Luke Spiller from the Struts and Taylor Momsen from the Pretty Reckless performed Fun, Fun, Fun. My comments on that, yeah, whatever.
It's like fun, 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 not. And I know you have a different opinion on this, but I didn't mind Pentatonix doing Heroes and Villains, because again, it was in their way.
It was in their way for sure. Which is why I didn't like it, because I don't like how they do their stuff.
Well, no, but again, you got to give them props for doing it in their style and for doing an a cappella harmony performance of it with even, I kind of like that they threw in a little bit of beatbox, again, just to show how the material can handle it.
Sure.
It'll still work. And I noticed that the performers all had, and this is the only performance in the show that had this, they had music stands because Heroes and Villains is really, really hard.
And they did a short version of it, too.
Yeah, they
cut some parts out.
But after having performed Heroes and Villains,
oh my goodness,
I kind of love that professional musicians needed to have
years, if not decades of experience.
Needed to have notes or sheet music or whatever in front of them.
Yeah.
Or maybe just like a big note saying, you can do this.
Oh.
Because it's hard.
Yeah, if anybody listening, if you've never been involved with a performance of Heroes and Villains, it is the most difficult thing I ever had to try to perform.
But it was wonderful.
Oh, man. I still have flashbacks of having my harmonica upside down. And it was a chromatic harmonica. You can't possibly get that wrong, and I still got it wrong.
All of us screwed up in some way or another. I screwed up. I was doing fine, but our leader gave me a look, and I thought I messed up when I didn't, but it messed me.
Was she just trying to conduct you or something?
I don't know, but she gave me a look, and I was like, oh, did I do something wrong? But I didn't do anything wrong. But it ended up messing me up because I didn't come in when I was supposed to.
Oh, mercy. Yeah, she was probably just trying to conduct you.
I know.
But anyway.
I'm looking at Sean's notes because I can't find mine. Lady A did Surfer Girl, and you put transposed from D to B. Sounds really weird. Just no life in this performance. Yeah, there were a couple very strange key changes. Mainly because people probably think, oh, the Beach Boys, this will be easy. No!
That's the same logic Vince Gill had when he chose to perform Surf's Up. Oh, that's a surf song. I can do that.
Yeah, until he sees that, like, he had to
and
sing.
that David Crosby and Jimmy Webb left him with the most difficult parts. They picked their parts out already. So, yeah. Good going.
Yeah, don't ever assume that Beach Boys music is simple.
No.
Oh, it's just a bunch of happy, fun party music. Yeah, written in really weird keys.
Yep. And with chord changes that don't make any sense in normal pop music theory, you know?
Or that have like a key signature with like 6 sharps or 6 flats in it.
Oh my.
And then everything is naturaled. Or they have double flats or double sharps or
good grief.
Whatever Brian's head could come up with.
Yeah. Now, there was something that I noticed specifically because I was ready to just start screaming my head off in anger. Those of you who don't listen to the Sail On podcast, they have a Patreon special. They give you more stuff if you subscribe to them via Patreon. And one of the things they have is Nia D'Amelio does a lot of things. She contributes a lot of things, mostly about concert stuff. And she was actually there at the Grammy performance. She found herself able to go at the last minute or something, but she was talking about how before they did Help Me Rhonda, the booth announcer that you hear on the TV special talked about how, okay, and here's the Beach Boys' #1 hit from the album The Beach Boys Today. And she said that she was screaming, no! But that was not included in the broadcast. So I was like, good. They probably got a lot of letters from people, or at least, of course, she was wondering, am I one of only 3 people in this crowd who knows what's wrong with this?
Well, see, and that's the problem with being a Beach Boys fan. It's like the more you know, the more you kind of wished you didn't know because it gets in the way of you just sitting back and enjoying yourself.
Okay, I just want to throw this out right now.
Uh-oh.
Anybody listening, or if you know someone who might be interested in doing this, make them listen. If you want to do a Beach Boys related thing, please consult with us for accuracy, for inconsistency or whatever. Because, again, we have a copy of the Surfin' USA album that has the full track listing on the bottom that includes Surf Jam and Stoked. For some reason, anytime that album art is used for something, they use the 80s reissue art. Come on. We'll let you use ours. You want to know what album a song is from? Let us know, okay? If you don't want to look it up and do a basic history lesson, it's like, just ask us.
It's like when we went to see Al Jardine some years ago. He did a show at City Winery.
I know where this is going.
And he's talking between the songs, and his son Matt was in his band. And I forget if it was Al or Matt, but they're like, if you want to know something, ask the fans.
Yep.
Because they couldn't, Al couldn't remember a particular factoid, and
like
we're
when
all
Carl was saying God only knows.
like how old Carl was.
How old he was, yeah.
So it's
there were some people in the audience, he was 20, and of course we were saying he was 19, and Al looked kind of worried. He's like, oh my God, what did I just do?
Al was there. But of course, being there, you don't always remember stuff. You don't always, we study this stuff like it's the Talmud. I mean, it's like... I remember once when Jeff Foskett said that, it was one of the two Jeff parties we went to where he was doing a living room performance. People were asking for his songs. And he said, well, I got to be honest, when I record something, I record it and I never really think of it again. That's probably pretty normal for everybody. Well, you go back to the great Star Trek sketch on Saturday Night Live when William Shatner hosted in the 80s, and he's speaking at a Star Trek convention, and somebody asks him what was the combination of the thing that Captain Kirk opened in this episode of season 2 or whatever, and he just starts going on this rant about, it's like, this was a show I did as a lark in my 20s, and or whatever, and it's just kind of funny and frightening, I'm sure, when people realize how much attention the fans give to things. It's kind of bizarre.
Yeah, and if you get uptight about a performer saying something incorrect about something, keep in mind, these people have been going at it for years.
Well, yeah.
They've been in the studios, on the road, and God forbid, living their own lives, too. Yeah. So they don't have time to go back and, let me read up on my own history.
Yeah. And again, just because you were there
doesn't mean you're correct.
I mean, like, you don't remember what color shirt your brother was wearing at your 8th birthday party. You don't remember things like that.
Oh, going back to how you didn't seem to remember Good Vibrations being part of this. Kind of goes back to when there was a montage of singles near the beginning of the show. And judging by that, you would think that the Beach Boys had no hits or any songs after Barbara Ann.
Well, that's sometimes the attitude.
Yeah, it's a bad, incorrect attitude.
Or it's like how there's several documentaries where it's like, Beach Boys hits, Cars, Girls, Surf, and then Pet Sounds, then Good Vibrations, then Smile Didn't Happen, and then Kokomo, or 1976. Like,
we didn't even have Kokomo on this thing, did we?
No.
Yeah.
But
John freaking Stamos was there too. Like he introduced the guy. All right, to be fair, number one, he's a friend of theirs, and number two, I think he really is a fanboy, just like we are. He
seriously is. And this is like the best thing that ever happened in his whole life was to be part of the Beach Boys camp. And for what it's worth, I mean, he's had a long career. And if you're looking at getting young people on board, young people know who he is because he's been in all kinds of stuff. He's been in current things. So it's like he's a very familiar face to multiple generations. So it's like you can see why they would have him there, but I still don't like him.
And interestingly, when he said Mike's name, he called him Michael Edward Love. He didn't do that to any of the other Beach Boys.
Well, I mean, he and Mike are tight, so I mean, that might be kind of a little in-joke or something.
Could be.
But yeah, again, that's just that kind of prevailing attitude that large chunks of the Beach Boys' history and catalog are often ignored.
Yep.
And, I mean, that's the thing. In this show, they didn't do anything from after... like 1966, right?
Heroes and Villains.
And Darling. Okay,
and Darling,
67.
and Do It Again.
Okay, 68. So, but nothing.
And Sail on Sailor.
Okay, fine. So, okay, nothing after 1968, with the exception of Sail on Sailor, which is from 1973.
Yes.
So, yeah, that is kind of surprising that there's no Kokomo. Huh.
Yeah, that was their biggest hit, like it or not.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And speaking of Sail on Sailor, it was Jimmy Jam introducing that song. John Legend sang it, and it was pretty decent. I mean, John Legend, I don't think he can sing anything badly.
Yeah.
I don't think he has that ability. But when Jimmy Jam introduced that performance, he mentioned how Ray Charles performed it on the special called 25 Years Together. And we know there's a lot of crossover with that because, again, like the John Stamos, he was on that as well.
Oh, good Lord. That shows you how long that guy's been around.
Yeah, seriously.
Because that special was done in 1980. Well, it was taped in late 86.
Yes.
And yeah, this was actual tape.
Yeah. We can safely assume it was tape.
And aired in early 1987 on ABC. And I still have somewhere a VHS tape where I recorded it off of Channel 7 WABC in New York. I remember watching it. I was in junior high and it's like, yay, Beach Boys special.
Yeah, so we decided to watch that after we watched the Grammy thing because why did we do that?
I think just for, well, it's like this. The tribute to Brian Wilson was the gold standard of doing a tribute to Beach Boys music. I mean, yes, it was no other Beach Boys were there. It was just Brian.
But let's be truthful. It was Beach Boys.
Yeah. Because the only Brian solo song they had was Love and Mercy.
And Lay Down Burden.
Oh, okay. Was that used in the broadcast? Or was that just in the filming?
I don't remember. It may be an extra on the DVD.
Yeah, I don't think it was part of the broadcast.
I don't think it was.
But I mean, that special is the gold standard because you had definite A-list names.
Oh, yeah.
You had people who treated the material with a great deal of respect. You had people who performed, again, in a way that was familiar, but also in their own style. Like Paul Simon did Surfer Girl on the acoustic guitar. You know,
Jubilant Sykes doing That's Not Me in kind of a smooth jazz way, and it was awesome.
Yeah. And when Anna Nancy Wilson from Heart sang lead on Good Vibrations.
That is seriously my favorite performance of Good Vibrations.
And it
was just so amazing.
And there were the filmed parts, the inserts, and the celebrity guests who weren't performing. They were just getting up and speaking. I mean, you had Sir George Martin, you had Dennis Hopper, wonderfully huge people who normally don't do these kinds of things.
And I think one thing that really helped make that a great special was there was a wide variety of performers. You had Brian's peers, and you had literally the latest up-and-coming performers, too. Yeah. So there was a lot of variety across that.
So it was just very well done, and Brian's band was the house band. I mean, it could not have been better. You look at other things and it's like, man.
I'll think about 25 years together, though. I think a lot of the blame just goes to the fact that it was the 80s.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the 80s were just terrible.
Embarrassing.
Because there were way too many people doing the hang loose hand gesture.
I kept track of that. I counted it 6 instances.
And too many people wearing the neon fake Ray-Bans with the little cord. And of course, because it was the 80s, you had to have lots of like girls in bikinis dancing at the front of the crowd.
It's too bad we're not doing a video podcast because I want to point out that there were several occurrences, several audience shots of women doing what I call the 80s woman dance.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to describe, but
it's just kind of
it's very generic.
Back and forth, kind of like step to the side, step back, step to the side, step back.
Yeah, put your hand above your head, now bring it back down.
And they had those hexagon electric drums.
Oh, God.
And okay, I'm looking at my notes from this, and of course, what we watched, I could dig out my old tape to see if there were any differences with the actual broadcast version, but it was put out on some kind of DVD or something in was it Sweden or
I think so. Yeah, Sweden or
so
Denmark
we
or
were
the
watching
Netherlands.
that, which is on YouTube. It's an hour and a half.
Yeah, we'll link it, assuming that it hasn't been yanked down.
So it's you look at that and you think, okay, just that alone, and it's obviously very edited. So it's how long were they filming this thing? Because seriously, after a while, everybody just kind of looks tired.
Yeah,
They're can we go home now? Can we go back to our hotel rooms and take a nap? And I'm not saying that they were old people, because they were...
You're in their 40s.
Yeah, I mean, they all were tan and fit and pretty good looking, but it's just this taping had to have gone on for hours. Because you do see there are some clothing changes and things. I like at the beginning, Mike is not wearing a shirt. I think he has a lei on. Yeah. And he had a sarong on, probably over his swim trunks or something. And I'm did he get out of the pool minutes before the taping started, where he didn't even have time to put on a shirt or a regular pair of shorts? I mean, he did later on. Later on, he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt or something. And of course, I have to wonder, why on earth was this thing filmed in Hawaii? That's not very clear. Here you have the band that pretty much defined California for millions of people. And you can't even say cost-wise, because
Hawaii is not cheap.
Because they had to get everybody to Hawaii. All the Beach Boys, all the band, their equipment, their family and friends who went with them, the crew, and then all the guest performers. They had to get them there too. Yep. And it's dude.
And if they Hollanded their equipment, then man.
I mean, what's wrong with Malibu? They couldn't have shot it in Malibu or Huntington Beach.
Oh, and by the way, speaking of Malibu, Huntington Beach, and just Hawaii, this is visual proof that some years ago, not terribly long ago, I don't think, the current iteration of the Beach Boys touring band played just a couple of miles south of us in Chicago at Montrose Beach. And I don't know if it was Mike or somebody else who was saying in promotion, all these years the Beach Boys never performed on the beach. Well, we're finally doing it. What's this thing then?
Yeah, and did they forget the 4th of July concert in 1983 that was done in Atlantic City?
That was done on the beach?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Oh, yes, it was.
I know it was done outdoors. That was obvious.
And I have a note here. Brian is weird, but sings great. That pretty much sums up Brian Wilson, doesn't it?
Seriously. Yeah, that thing, Brian was just... there are times when he's just kind of wandering around on the stage, sometimes without a shirt on. And it just makes me think of Phil Hartman's Frankenstein character. Fire, bad.
Yeah.
He must have been on some weird things from the special consultant that was credited in the movie.
Well, and that, really, that was about the time that I think Landy was starting to kind of overstep his bounds.
Probably.
Both personally and professionally and medically. That may have been about the time Brian started to become more medicated. And it's pretty significant that in the course of this special, there's very little interaction between the members of the band. There's almost no banter or how's everybody doing? Or the speaking that is done is very obviously read off of cue cards.
Well, yeah.
It's very still.
We know who had to make the cue cards too.
It's very
rest in peace, Laurie.
It's very stilted, and there's not a lot of warmth there. And I don't know why. We can probably come up with a lot of theories, but I don't know really why that was. Speaking of doing tributes, Carl talks about Dennis in one intro, but he does a tribute to Dennis with a song that Dennis didn't write or perform on and isn't about him at all.
Yeah, it's a love song.
It's Carl's song Heaven, but it has nothing to do with Dennis. Again, forever, Hello? Anyone? Bueller?
I mean,
Shut up.
Don't get me started on that. Anyway, but Carl said something about, like, right before he performed it, he said something about how whenever I sing this song, I think of Dennis. So that might be why.
Yeah, but
still, it's
Reach.
And Carl, dude, come on, man. Even if you were trying to promote your solo work, that wasn't from your most recent solo album.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it was a nice performance. It's a nice song.
And something else that was kind of, huh? So Belinda Carlisle did a good performance of Wouldn't It Be Nice, except she was wearing this weird dress that I don't know if there was some kind of, if it needed an alteration that didn't get, or if it was too big for her, but it kept slipping off her shoulders. And while she's singing, she keeps yanking it back into place.
Yeah, I counted 4 times you actually see her yanking it back into place. And there are other times when she obviously did it off camera because it's a little bit higher up on her.
And then for some reason after it, she sang
Band of Gold.
Yeah, the Frida Payne song. It's like, huh? Which I don't think was even like a single of hers.
I think she did a version of it not terribly long before that.
Yeah, but still.
But it wasn't a significant. It wasn't like, say, Heaven is a Place on Earth.
It's a Beach Boys special. You're not there to really promote yourself. And then kind of a weird thing that we noticed, again, I might want to look back at my broadcast video copy to see if it was like this, but there were several songs that appeared multiple times. Like they did 2 different performances of Barbara Ann.
There are 3 different performances. And it's not the same performance, just edited in, because they're clearly, that's when you can see like wardrobe changes happening.
And they did Surfer Girl twice.
Oh, that, and the weird thing about Surfer Girl, one of those performances.
You talk about that.
Oh my God. I think I got vertigo listening to one of the performances because after the Everly Brothers performed, the Beach Boys did Surfer Girl. When they got to the bridge, now Surfer Girl is done in the key of D. That's the usual key, and that's how they started it. But when they got to the bridge, we could ride, they bumped the key up a whole step to E for no reason whatsoever. And then after the bridge, it goes back to the original key of D. Now, the way the song ends is the second half of the last verse on any other version of that song, they modulate it up a half step. They didn't do that here. And it was just a very jarring alteration of the song. It's in D for the whole entire song except for the bridge, which is in E. I don't know why they did that. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, and they didn't do it that way the other time they performed it. So yeah,
That was just bizarre.
Don't get it. And, like the Everly Brothers were there. They did Don't Worry Baby, which segued into Getcha Back. Okay, good.
Cool.
But then they did Wake Up Little Susie. Again, this isn't about you.
Well, for what it's worth, the first 2 songs they did were Beach Boys. So, I mean, here's the thing. If you're going to have these celebrity guests on there, you almost want to hear them do one of their songs just for crowd pleasure.
No, I don't. Because this is about the Beach Boys. We didn't have in the Brian tribute, nobody else did their own stuff.
That's because they were tributing Brian.
That's right.
Was this really a tribute, though? It was just like, hey, 25 years together.
A celebration.
We're celebrating.
Okay.
And we're going to celebrate by having our friends sing some of their songs.
No, sorry. I don't accept.
I don't fault them.
I don't expect. No, that is not acceptable. Okay, and I get around. I have a note. Glenn Campbell totally sang the wrong lyrics.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I mean, the lyrics were on the cue cards. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, he totally he totally blew that. Well, none of the kind goes steady, it wouldn't be right to leave her home on a Saturday night.
You know, he probably got those lyrics out of his Ocean Pacific shorts that he kept pulling out of his crack.
One thing I kind of like is the for Be True to Your School, they had the Punahou high school cheerleaders, or Punahou Academy, who at that time their cheerleaders were going on to some kind of national competition. That's Barack Obama's alma mater.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We talked about. Oh, God, yeah, and I have a note next to that, extra nasally Mike.
Oh, yeah.
He's
Mike
like, be true to your school.
Mike was very nasal.
Yeah, the 80s were very much a time of Mike saying, ha, 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 we're old and I'm going to make us sound old. Because you see, this is how we sounded back then. And
oh, God.
all signs point to he stopped doing that eventually.
And of course, Don Ho was there.
I keep telling you, you don't believe me, but it is a requirement. It was a requirement to his dying day that if you shot anything in Hawaii, he had to make a cameo. That was federal law.
Yeah, no matter how corny or contrived it might be.
That was the 27th Amendment to the Constitution. Look it up. He didn't sing.
No.
He joined the big group sing-along at the end.
Which kind of, I mean, he could have gotten up there with a ukulele. Yeah. That would have been fine. Okay, and you notice, what song did they not do? Hawaii.
Oh.
Why didn't they do Hawaii?
Oh my goodness. I'd never thought of that, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
Or even luau. They could have done luau. Let's have a luau.
Oh, they probably couldn't get the clearance from the Morgans.
Yeah, right. And now let's have a little oh my God, this is the 80s moment. Because there's two big things about that. Because again, yes, John Stamos was very 80s, but he's again a person who has had a career that extended far beyond the 80s.
Yeah.
Okay? But then there are people like Patrick Duffy.
Oh, good
from
grief.
Dallas with his perfectly molded hair. That was, oh my God, why are you here? And then even worse, Joe Piscopo doing his stupid jerk from New Jersey shtick, which, being from New Jersey, it's like, shut up.
And there was a hang loose sighting during that scene.
It's like you're making us all look bad.
Oh.
Yeah, and
that wasn't the last time we saw him.
And the fact is, his New Jersey thing was not, the crowd gathered around, people really weren't laughing. It wasn't very funny.
Joe Piscopo is not funny, that's why. He made an appearance later on in the special, too, during Surfin' USA, if you remember.
Yeah.
Because the crowd started chanting Bruce, and of course the camera's on Bruce Johnston, and he's like, oh, listen, you're chanting my name, haha. But no, it was Joe Piscopo.
Pretending to be Springsteen.
Surfing in the USA! And it's because of this, oh man, that I swear to God this is true, and I will link this in the show notes. If you look up the entry for 25 Years Together in the Paley Center website, it actually lists Bruce Springsteen as one of the performers.
And of course, the thing about it is, I don't know if Springsteen would have appeared in something like this back then, but in more recent years, I mean, he was in, was it Long Promised Road? Was he?
Oh, was he in that?
I mean, he has definitely spoken in more recent years about Brian, about the Beach Boys music. He's even done a couple songs that evoke some kind of Beach Boys influence.
Mm-hmm.
Not trying to sound just like them, more like the influence is there.
Yeah. And you did see him join Brian on stage at the Garden State Arts Center.
Yes, I did. In, was that 2015? I think that was 2015. Because I was out in New Jersey and took my mother because she had never seen Brian in concert. And during the encore set, we were sitting not far from the stage, but over on the right side. And you could hear buzz, buzz, because there was a guy who had come out on stage for the encore set, just wearing a baseball cap. And he was over on the left side of the stage. And I guess the people on that side could see that it was Springsteen. And then Brian introduced, or somebody in the band introduced him, and he sang on, I think, Surfin' USA and Barbara Ann or something like that. Didn't play a guitar, didn't do anything, just kind of came out to sing a couple things and then made his exit. But it's like, Springsteen.
Yep.
I mean, he only lives about 15 minutes from there, so it was a pretty easy trip for him. But yeah, it's that was pretty awful. And, Sean and I have this theory that you have people who are really popular or doing lots of things, and then you suddenly never hear about them again. And we feel that they just get like a registered letter in the mail saying, thank you, your services are no longer needed. Because like the 80s have ended, or because you're obnoxious, or
the 80s have ended and you're obnoxious.
But we really think Joe Piscopo must have gotten such a letter, because after a certain time, you never heard about him or saw him ever again.
What about the Fabulous Thunderbirds, though? Do you think they got the same letter?
Well, they probably got a letter saying, you guys sound pretty good, but the 80s are over.
Yeah, they did rock and roll music, but it wasn't even in the style that the Beach Boys did. It was in the same key, but it was kind of a swingy, bluesy kind of rhythm. So I don't know. There's nothing wrong with the Fabulous Thunder. I didn't know until we rewatched this that Kim Wilson was in the Fabulous Thunderbirds. I had no idea. To me, Kim Wilson was a blues harp guy. Because I have one of his CDs.
Well,
it's really good, Tiger Man.
From what I remember of the Fabulous Thunderbirds, didn't they have a lot of harmonica in their stuff?
I don't remember much about the Fabulous Thunderbirds.
I just remember like one song, and I think there was harmonica in it. One thing I did like is that when Three Dog Night, with Danny Hutton, of course, they were there, and they performed on Darlin', and Brian mentioned kind of the backstory of that song, that it was called Darlin' because that's what Danny Hutton called everybody back then. I kind of like that there was that genuine piece of information.
To me, though, that was a cringe moment, because they're saying, hey, here's Three Dog Night. No, it's only two guys, two of the three singers from Three Dog Night, and no other band member.
Yeah.
That was a whole band, not just Danny Hutton and Corey Wells. Yeah, Chuck Negron was conspicuously absent for obvious reasons. But
oh, and of course, one of our favorite moments was when there's one part when Mike is reading an intro off the cue card, and Brian is right behind his shoulder, reading along the cue card and mouthing the words as Brian, as Mike is saying them.
I have a note of that, where exactly that is.
Yeah, I do too. I can't. It's the intro for God Only Knows.
Yes. It's 58 minutes and 40 seconds into the video we watched on YouTube.
Yeah, Mike is doing the intro for God Only Knows that was performed by Jeffrey Osborne. And Brian's mouthing along. I don't think anybody even realized that.
Yeah, we didn't even realize it the first few times we saw this. I think it was one of the times we watched it with other people. When you're watching it with other people, you tend to pay more attention to things. But really, the entire time, Brian obviously had his eyes glued to cue cards the whole freaking show. Now, mind you, one thing I do want to say is that Brian wasn't this controlled zombie the whole show. Like, there are a couple of moments where he's clearly having a good time and he's getting caught up in the moment. Like, say, was it during California Girls, I think, when girls were walking one by one on stage and putting leis around the guys? Yeah. I think Brian was the first one. When the girl who gave Brian his leg came up, he picked her up and carried her off the stage.
And there is a time when he high-fives Mike.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. He was kind of off to one side of the stage, and the only member of the group at all that Brian has any interaction with is Mike.
Yeah.
I don't know, again, what's up with that.
Except during the scripted moment, I went to Hawthorne High School. Where did you go, Al? Oh, I went to Hawthorne with you, Brian.
Oh, God. And see, that was something, again, I don't think it was unique to that show, because when I saw the Beach Boys in concert in 89 and 90, I think I was a little bit spoiled from having gone to Monkees concerts, where these guys had such a good rapport with each other that even if they were doing something that was scripted, it never came off that way. Like, they had a very loose, friendly, and even if they couldn't stand the sight of each other, they could go out on stage and make jokes and And I mean, I saw enough Monkees concerts to know they didn't say the exact same things at every show.
Yeah.
But like with the Beach Boys, there was no banter, there was no comfortableness, which is just weird. That was consistent with what I saw in this special, that like, I don't know if they just were very stiff and uncomfortable in that way or what, but it doesn't make for a warm and friendly show when like the members of the band aren't even making eye contact with each other or like looking like they're having a good time playing these songs and being together in this beautiful place.
Wonder what it's like to be at an Oasis concert.
Oh God. Let's not think about
something
that ever.
Something I just saw in my notes that I have to mention because I don't remember if I mentioned my whole Sloop John B theory on this podcast. I'm not going to get into it now because it's a little bit deep, but part of my Sloop John B theory is in that it wasn't necessarily because of Al that they really did Sloop John B, but because Brian always had it on his radar. We have more than enough evidence for that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought about when I noticed that was like, wait a minute. If this truly was Al's song, then why did he never actually sing it, say, in concert? Why did they toss it over to Carl? Well, in 25 years together, Al sings it. He sings the first verse, and then Mike, with his overnasally voice, sings the second verse, and then Brian sings the third verse, and he sounds really good on this one, too. So that was pretty cool. We actually get to see Al sing it.
Well, like I said, Brian looks weird, but sounds good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was an awkward performance because Sail on Sailor ended pretty. It's not that Sail on Sailor ended abruptly, but Sloop John B just suddenly came out of nowhere as soon as Sail on Sailor ended. I don't know if that's how it was performed or if that was just editing, but it was just kind of awkward.
Yeah, there was a lot of awkward. And again, my guess is that this was a very, very long day of filming because it doesn't seem to be very well organized.
I mean, we can ask somebody like how long it took to put this together because I know of a couple of people we can reach out to who would be happy to answer questions. But something else that I noticed, and I don't remember if I pointed this out while we were watching it, but during Do It Again, I noticed somebody in the audience wearing a Sunkissed t-shirt. I don't know if that was a coincidence or if that was a plant.
Well, considering that was about 6 or 7 years after the Sunkissed Beach Boys campaign,
I don't know.
It may have just been like, hey, there's a kid wearing a Sunkissed t-shirt. Let's get a shot of it. But I doubt it was a plant because I don't think they were shilling for Sunkissed orange soda that late.
Yeah. Oh, and I know I'm jumping around here, but going back to the Everly Brothers and how they performed Don't Worry Baby, die-hard fans know about this, but people who aren't quite as die-hard might not know. A couple of years later, the Beach Boys and the Everly Brothers recorded Don't Worry Baby together. So there is a recording out there of that floating around. It was released on a single, I think, like might have been a B-side. Another fun fact, and I wanted to address this because a lot of people wonder about this. When Glenn Campbell first appears, he's singing a song, and it's like, what song is this? There are some people who think that it's After the Game, because the phrase after the game was in the lyrics, but no, After the Game was an instrumental. And then Mike comes over and kind of interrupts him and says, hey, I know that Jimmy Webb wrote that song for you and all this. The song that Glenn was singing was called In Cars, and he had recently recorded it at the time. It wasn't an old song. Or at least it wasn't an old recording. He had just in the last year or 2 or 3 recorded that for one of his albums. So that's the answer to the age-old question. What song was Glenn singing? It was In Cars.
Another kind of accurate factoid, when before Ray Charles performed Sail on Sailor, Brian noted, "This is the voice I heard when I wrote this song."
I could totally see that.
So that was kind of nice that Brian got to say that.
I gotta say, I didn't like the way that Ray sang it, though, because he was kind of doing a little bit too improv-y kind of things. I sailed an ocean. It was too much of that.
Well, I think that's more his style. I mean, it sounded like he was doing it the way he would have done it. And I noted how at the very end, they ended with Good Vibrations as a big group sing-along.
Yeah.
And with a very sloppy ending. And then I put sloppy dedication to Dennis, because I think like Carl or somebody else, this is for Dennis. And it's just like, okay.
Yeah,
so
I have a note here that says final thoughts, including awkward shout out to Dennis.
But before we sign off, we want to take a moment to dedicate the show to our late brother Dennis.
We love you, man, and we want you to know that you'll always be with us no matter where we go.
For the next 25 years and beyond.
It's like, why didn't you do a proper tribute to him? Huh? Why?
Yeah. It's about time. That would have been a great pseudo-closer.
Anything.
Yeah. And of course, after Good Vibrations, somebody, I think it was Al, said, here's a new one from Brian. And it's The Spirit of Rock and Roll. And it's clear that Brian was singing along to a recorded track because he's double tracked in a few places. But I mean, overall, it was a decent performance of the song. And it was clearly done before Buddy Holly was mentioned in the lyrics, because instead of Chuck, Buddy, and Elvis, it was Chuck Berry and Elvis. And we did not hear Bob Dylan sing along on this one. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you've never heard the duet that Brian did with Bob Dylan, you've never heard the Sweet Insanity version of this song, go check it out. It's got to be all over YouTube.
No.
Because you've never heard anything until you hear Bob Dylan sing on this like retro rock and roll. What's this in your blood? It's very jarring to hear like Brian shouting, it's out in every land.
Yeah.
Insanity is so sweet, isn't it?
But see, that's, when you're a Beach Boys fan, you have to put up with things that are kind of, huh? There's a lot of, huh? It's almost like, what did I read once in regards to the TV movies done about the Beach Boys? It's like, yeah, ABC is going to make a new movie every decade until they get it right.
Yeah, wasn't that in Entertainment Weekly?
I think so. It's like, yeah, Beach Boys primetime TV specials are kind of uneven.
Yep.
But that's what we have to deal with.
That's what we have to deal with.
No one ever said being a Beach Boys fan was going to be easy.
Yep, that's true. But hey, it provides us with podcast material.
Well, yeah, because if it was a perfectly produced special, I mean, that would be boring to talk about.
We did spend an entire episode talking about the TNT tribute to
Oh,
Brian,
that is true.
And that was put together very well.
That was beautiful. Okay, so it wasn't...
We're not just here to talk about bad stuff. We're here to talk about good stuff,
yeah, but the bad stuff can be fun.
That's very true. That's very true. But do you have a favorite moment from 25 years together? Like a legitimately favorite moment that you like to go back and watch? Oh,
you mean that's not like, say, Brian mouthing the cue card words?
No, somebody who isn't a fan but says, hey, I want to see something Beach Boys that you could recommend. Is there anything from here that you would be comfortable showing somebody? I'll put it to you that way. And I have an answer here.
Okay, you answer.
Glenn Campbell. Because seriously, I thought he overall did a really good job. His voice sounded fantastic. I liked how he kind of changed up Little Deuce Coupe a little bit in terms of melody. I thought he did a really cool job with that. And by the way, speaking of Glenn Campbell, I wrote down the strange lyrics that he sang to I Get Around. And the lyrics were, it's the last verse. None of the guys go stood anymore. It wouldn't be right to leave her home on a Saturday night. And in brackets, I have Taiwan? Did he
like
say
one of those weird
Taiwan?
Records? Oh, okay. I thought you meant like one of those weird
no, that's
records.
exactly, that's what I was talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like maybe he got the lyrics from one of those Taiwanese pirates. That's why I put that in there. Yes. Yeah, and he also sang Little Old Lady from Pasadena, which is kind of, I mean, the Beach Boys would do it in concert, of course.
Yeah.
It's on Beach Boys concert, but still an odd one to choose because it's not a Beach Boys song in any way outside of that concert.
I mean, to be honest, like, there's plenty of performances that are good, but nothing that's really like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really like, oh my God, this is a great, memorable moment. It's just more like they're just out there churning out the hits and doing them doing them as you would want, as you would expect, but it's not like it's... And I think we may have even said this before on this podcast. I think it was it Rob McCabe who said that going to a Beach Boys concert is like going to a party, and going to a Brian concert is like going to church, like where you're going to have Beach Boys concerts, like, you know, you're going to have a good time. Yay. Hit. But it's like a Brian concert is going to get you in your heart, in your soul, where it's really going to mean something.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be something almost spiritual, where it's like, there was nothing spiritual about this special.
Now, I'm going to ask you the same question I just asked, but about the Grammy special. What do you think about that? Was there any performance in there that really stuck out to you as really something enjoyable, something good?
Well, like I said, the Mumford & Sons performance of I Know There's an Answer, because it was just so different. And I liked John Legend doing Sail on Sailor.
That was good.
And Norah Jones doing The Warmth of the Sun. And Charlie Puth doing Wouldn't It Be Nice?
Charlie Puth did a really good job with that.
And I know a lot of fans weren't crazy about this, but I thought Brandi Carlile and John Legend did a nice job with God Only Knows at the end. I think they did a little bit too much melisma, but...
Yeah, I have a note here that said basically like all the performers in general sounded like they were trying to out-snazz each other.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there were definitely good performances on the Grammy thing. I mean, nobody who sounded bad.
Yeah.
Just there were performances that were better than others, performances that were kind of just too much like the record and not very interesting, or even, again, the kind of underestimating of Beach Boys material, like thinking, oh, this is going to be easy. And it's like, no, it's not.
And another note that I had, in addition to, say, Norah Jones saying, well, we've been talking a lot about the genius of Brian Wilson and Mike Love tonight. I don't think they ever mentioned him.
No.
Ever mentioned Mike, poor Mike.
You know, it's more like we've been talking about the genius of Brian Wilson for a very, very long time.
But the other thing that I noticed about this special is that when you have shots of the audience, it was a pretty young audience.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool to see that.
Yeah. Well, there was a young audience at the 25th anniversary special too.
Yeah.
But
of course, going back, like they look like today's 40.
I know, right?
But is that all we have to say? Are we done talking about these two specials vis-a-vis each other?
Yes, I think we are.
Okay, bye.
That's kind of abrupt.
Well, I think it's kind of fitting because 25 years together had a lot of abruptness.
25 years.
That's another thing. I could have sworn when we watched it
I think
before,
in the broadcast there may have been some different
there were
edits.
so many like 25 years. Can you believe it's been 25 years? Well, we've been doing this for 25 years. This 25 years, this 20. There wasn't really much of that in at least the version we watched to prep for this episode. That we're going to link in the show notes, assuming it hasn't yet been victimized by the BRI police. Now, yeah, we had a lot of kind of negativity on these specials, but still, it was worth checking out.
Well, of course. I
somehow enjoyed 25 years together more, believe it or not.
Well, because it was more of a party.
Yeah.
And I think we're just
jaded.
Yeah. I mean, we are. And it's like when you've been looking at this stuff over the years and you've seen times that the Beach Boys have kind of not gone above and beyond, not like really try to outdo themselves. And sometimes it's a little disappointing. But hey, it's also good to see that there are people who have respect for this material and still have interest in it and still want to put it on TV. And I mean, that's all good too. I mean, this stuff is not made for us. I mean, that's the thing. When you're kind of a more intense fan, you always have to look at it that way, that we're not necessarily the target here.
Yeah.
So you can't expect them to make you happy. They're going for a broader audience, broader appeal. And if it satisfies that, then it's all good.
Yeah, that's very true. And when you think about it, though, you have 25 years together. You have the couple of years after, well, a year after that aired, Kokomo was number one. You had country stars joining forces with the Beach Boys in 1996. And of course, you have this 60th anniversary thing, the 50th anniversary tour. What we are learning about this is that interest in the Beach Boys is not going away anytime soon.
Nope.
So that's,
I mean,
that's
just the mere fact that Sounds of Summer keeps selling.
Yeah.
And again, it's like...
And we're recording this on just after the anniversary of Endless Summer, by the way.
Well, it's also that in...
Tasmania?
Shut up. Tasmania. When Sounds of Summer came out, and we may have already talked about this, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but it's like when Sounds of Summer came out, or when the greatest hits package that preceded it, the 3 CDs, I forget what they were called. It was like whatever replaced Endless Summer.
Yeah.
There were fans who were up in arms because it's like, oh, they're expecting us to buy these CDs again. Because, like, sometimes, they throw in, like, oh, here's a stereo mix, or here's, whatever. And it's like, dude, this is not for us. Capitol knows that we already own all this stuff.
Yeah.
This is for the people who don't own a Beach Boys record, or who haven't bought one in a long time. And they're like, hey, the Beach Boys are great. I don't really have any of them on my iTunes. I'm going to go buy this now. Like, that's what they're selling it for. Not for all of us crazy people who own 6 copies of Pet Sounds.
Only 6?
Yeah, well.
You are underestimating our collection.
But you dig what I'm saying.
I do dig, yes, indeed.
So yeah, this stuff is not necessarily for us.
Right.
But if it gets people on board, it's all good.
Yeah, and we thank you for being on board with us.
Yay.
Here on episode 17 of TuneX Podcast. We'll hopefully get another episode out before another 3 months goes by.
Yeah, let's not do that again.
But, we're gonna be in England probably before the next time we record. Yeah, our first transcontinental flight. Ooh.
Yay!
But anyway, my name is Sean.
And I'm Lisa.
And, talk to you again.
Thank you for listening to the TuneX Podcast. Please leave us a review at Apple Podcasts or iTunes.
You can hear us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Amazon, Google Podcasts, and just about every other provider out there. If TuneX isn't on your favorite provider, please let us know.
You can email us at tunexpodcast@gmail.com. Our website, which includes the show notes, is tunex.fab4it.com. Fab4it is spelled F-A-B, then the number 4, then I-T.
Feel free to connect with us on social media. TuneX is on Facebook, and we're also on Instagram and Twitter, both under the handle of TuneX Podcast.
Our opening and closing theme, Melody 10, was written and performed by Scattered Frog. All other music and sounds used in this episode remain the properties of their respective copyright holders and are used for the purposes of commentary and review. No infringement is intended.
We'll see you next time, friends. Until then,
Don't back down from that wave.